I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakeims.
All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
I just realized that I was listening to the podcast on my cell phone, and I was like,
is that my voice in your house?
It certainly was, Taylor. Well, what's going on, everyone? That's a good start to the Tuesday show. Welcome in to another episode of the Patriots Daily podcast here on the CLNS Media Network. We're powered by Prize Picks. We're powered by Game Time. You guys know that. We'll hear from more from them in a little while. But first, Taylor, it's a Tuesday show. We were kind of going back and forth on how we wanted to do this thing. And then a bunch of Patriots news came down today. We have KJ Osborn news. We have a backup kicker coming into Foxboro as well. Coaching news, Bill Belichick and Jerod Mayo, stuff coming down from all angles. So we figured quick hitter, half hour, come in here, talk about all of the news and notes, and then close it out with what we're looking for from this Patriots team over these next 4 games post-bye. So let's start right off the bat with, I would say, the biggest actual piece of hard news of the day, and that is that the Patriots waived wide receiver KJ Osborn. According to reports, it was a mutual agreement between the wide receiver and the team. Osborn, call it like it was not great with the Patriots this season, signed on a 1-year, $4 million contract. Towards the back half, the latter half of their free agent push, if you will, this offseason, he was, I think, one of the final guys signed, him and Jalen Hawkins at safety. So they release him. Schefter saying that he'll look to tag onto a team here that he'll be able to essentially play more down the stretch. And I think that this move really, to me, is a signal that they're going to look to play these younger guys, get Jalen Polk really in the mix, not take him off the field, not take him off the field, but his play will increase. Javon Baker as well, rookie 4th round pick, trying to get him into the mix. And Andrew Callahan, actually, I heard him talking about it this morning on 98.5 The Sports Hub, where saying that the idea of tanking, you're never going to tank, obviously, but when you say, oh, we're going to play our younger guys, that's sort of the NFL tanking, where you put the younger guys out there, you see what happens. The wins and losses don't actually matter. And that's kind of what this feels like to me for the Patriots. So Osborn released. What's the face? You don't like that connotation?
Considering what we're going to talk about later, I really do not see how this is a move to tank.
No. Sorry. And I don't want to put words in Andrew's mouth. He didn't mean it like that. But I'm saying where it's like you can't actually say it. And I don't think they're looking to lose, but it's the way of you're tanking without tanking, where I'm trying to explain how I kind of say how
I think that by putting the young players in, yes, there is going to be some level of, backsliding unless they show great improvement. But I don't think this was I think what Mayo said was honest in that they just want to get those younger guys experience. I don't think it has anything to do with what them wanting to be better or worse record-wise. I think they want to be better, they want to win, but I also think that they understand if they don't give these young guys opportunities, or at least they don't earn them and really step up, then you're going into the offseason saying these are unproven commodities that we cannot rely on in 2024-5.
100%. So Osborn's gone. Before we get into the bigger storyline here, and that is the 2024 free agency class as a whole, I know I kind of said my piece on the wide receiver room, but your thoughts on the actual release of Osborn, what that means for the receiver room. Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Your quick hitter thoughts on this move.
Yeah, so the initial thought was, why did it take so long? Because we thought this would happen maybe once he was no longer on the waiver wire and wouldn't have to go to whatever team claimed him, like Yannick Ngakoue did when he was cut by Baltimore and the Patriots picked him up. We heard that he planned to sign to a practice squad, either on the Bengals or the Ravens, I believe it was, on some team that has playoff aspirations.
Right.
Ended up getting picked up by the Patriots. They had a discussion or whatever. So we were thinking around that time, okay, KJ's probably going to get cut after that. Then weeks turned into a month, and we were saying, all right, what's going on? Why is this taking so long? Then I thought about it. If they had cut KJ Osborn after the waiver wire things, that would have been week 7, week 8 or something like that.
Right.
They would have had to go, and this was before they were out of playoff contention, mind you. So, obviously, I think they were still fighting for that. And I think it would have been really hard for Mayo to sit there and make moves that made it look like they were kind of very aggressively gearing towards next season. But yeah, if you would cut KJ Osborn, you got the three top guys, right? You got Kendrick Bourne, who was still kind of working his way back, is still kind of working his way back in terms of chemistry with Drake. You got Kayshon Boutte, who's been a fixture since like midseason when he really started to pick up steam. And then obviously Pop Douglas. Behind them, it was KJ Osborn, who ended up having to come in against the Bears, Jalen Polk, and Javon Baker. Polk and Baker, as we know, have done nothing. Like KJ Osborn's done nothing, but neither have Polk and Baker.
Right.
They've really been on the field. Even when Polk's on the field, a lot of the time it feels like he's not really on the same page as Drake or not executing his assignment the way you'd ideally like or what have you. So if they cut KJ Osborn, especially before this part of the season where it's the last month, it's like, all right, like we said, we're trying to get these young guys and see what they are about. You would have kind of been stuck with two rookies as your only other backups. Now, Osborn, other than the Bears game, like wasn't really getting in, so obviously that wasn't a huge factor. But if one of those guys like Kendrick Bourne or Pop Douglas had gone down, you'd feel better about KJ Osborn in that spot than you would Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, at least to that point. So that to me explains why it might have taken so long. I know that people wanted him cut after the whole comment or the post with his agent and everything, or his friend, whatever it was, where it was mentioned that he wasn't even supposed to play in that game in Germany. That was like a blip on the radar, though. Like, yeah, bad decision by him, but we have not heard anything else. There was not a peep from KJ Osborn. If anything, we saw him being a great teammate on the sideline, hyping guys up and making sure they were, getting the love they deserved. And based on everything we've heard, I'm sure he was also a positive presence behind the scenes. So, I mean, when he was signed, we knew this was Kendrick Bourne experience. In my roster projections, I didn't even know if KJ Osborn was going to make the roster. I figured if Kayshon Boutte really started to show up, then he might be a casualty because he was only on a one-year deal. So this doesn't surprise me. None of this surprises me. I didn't see this as the kind of like difference-making move necessarily. Like obviously in Minnesota, he had some success downfield, but with Jacoby Brissett, that wasn't going to happen. And even in the summer, we saw him get a little bit something going downfield. That pretty much evaporated once the regular season started. So I hope he gets to go to a playoff team, compete and play into January and all that. Good for him. I think the Patriots, like I said, this is a move they needed to make, especially with it seeming like Cole Strange is going to be activated off injured reserve. And as we know,
breaking news.
Oh, sheesh. Okay.
Cole Strange has been activated off of
There you go. There you go. Oh my goodness.
Yep. Yeah. So I was gonna let you go on your spiel. I was gonna kind of transition to that. I know we don't have much more on Cole because we did our whole reinforcements video. It was expected, but it just came off Schefter's Twitter like 60 seconds ago that Cole Strange will be activated. So he's going to be on the active roster. They'll have to make a move there. Positive stuff. I think again, I hate to sort of steer away from content, but we knew this was coming, and it feels like that's a good thing. So I think we can kind of continue on with KJ. But quick thoughts, then I guess we'll go to KJ. We'll go with your thoughts on Strange returning before we look at this free agent class.
Yeah. So with Cole Strange, I think that I just want to make sure expectations are tempered because this is a guy who has not played in almost a full calendar year of football. That's asking a lot of anybody, especially someone coming off a significant injury like he was. He's been at practice, but these weren't really contact practices. So he's going to be banging and really like getting into the thick of things for the first time this week. So let's make sure we keep things, we understand what the situation is. Ben Brown, I posted earlier today, since week 10 has been the third best center in terms of pressure allowed. It's only been like 1.7% or something like that. And he's been pretty solid as a run blocker. Not great. That's probably the biggest area you'd like to upgrade. He's not an excellent run blocker or anything like that. And I think that's one of Cole Strange's strengths. So obviously Cole gives you more. He was a first-round pick. Even if he should have been a second or third, Ben Brown wasn't drafted. Or at least, he wasn't that high of a priority for teams when he was a rookie. So I think Cole Strange coming back is awesome. I don't know when exactly we'll see him on the field. I don't know if it'll be this week. I don't know if it'll be next week. He had to be activated so he could even play because they didn't activate him this week. He would have just been on injured reserve for the season, and you'd have no idea what you really had at him as a potential center prospect. So it's exciting. I've been saying for years I think Cole Strange is best at center, and now maybe he'll get a chance to prove that and potentially be the successor to David Andrews.
Yeah, glad you kind of tempered the expectations as far as playing this week. You wonder if it'll happen. Again, he's been rehabbing for quite some time now, so we'll see if he can sort of get in the pads this week. I don't think they were in pads yesterday, so he hasn't really even practiced in pads yet. So you mentioned sort of getting those first couple hits and contact practices under him, but they did have to activate him because of the 21-day window that he had been now subjected to since being on IR. So good for Strange. He gets activated. We'll see where he can kind of file in here over these next 4 weeks. You do want to see what he can bring to the table heading into 2025. So back to KJ Osborn for a second and back to this free agent class as a whole. Before we get to the class, quickly on KJ, he was a really good pro here. And you mentioned it, and I know the blip on the radar with the social media thing happened, and it was regrettable, and he even apologized for it. But one of the things that, one of my favorite sort of behind the scenes KJ Osborn stories is, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks ago, all of this crap was happening around, and the Patriots were in a lull. They hadn't won many games. He scored that touchdown. He did the call God thing. He was in the the news, whatever. And he was also talking about, it was right around the trade deadline where he had mentioned that, he wouldn't really, he'll be where his feet are and wherever.
Yeah, all the typical, I might get cut, traded.
Yeah, right. But
like, I'm not going to be here.
And in that, the Patriots brought in Braylon Sanders on their practice squad. For a lack of a better term, a no-name, bottom of the roster wide receiver. And his first day there, I watched Osborn walk out to practice with Braylon Sanders right next to him. And I'm
that's awesome.
This guy is just, has no business being with the Patriots. Both of them, frankly, Osborn and Sanders. And Osborn still grabs him, takes him under his wing, and starts to kind of teach him the way around the Patriots. I thought that was really cool. I thought that, to me, showed exactly the kind of player and the kind of locker room guy he is. So wish him well. He was a good pro here. He didn't perform on the field, but good on Osborn for that, I would say. So let's take.
Also, I'll just throw in one last thing, just because I know he was supposed to do something with the Patriots. When the holiday season really came closer to Christmas, I know he was going to do something. I was hoping I'd be able to go and cover it with him, where he was going to help people pay their rent who are kind of in bad financial circumstances, because he was telling me that when he was younger, someone helped pay his mom's rent when they were really struggling as a kid. So again, like a really classy guy. When I say blip on the radar, I mean a blip. He was great to us. He was always kind, always very generous with his time, and by all accounts was also great in the locker room. I just wanted to add that one last thing, because he didn't just take up space. He was more like a Jacoby Brissett, where behind the scenes he's doing a whole lot for a room that lacks a lot of experience.
Yep, for sure. I'm with you there. So hopefully he lands on his feet. But let's fold that into the rest of this 2024 free agent class, which I have on screen here. I tweeted it out earlier. And now I wrote out who was cut, and I used cut very loosely here. Now, Okorafor basically said he didn't want to play football anymore. They put him on a reserve, like retired no-show type list.
Squad or something like that.
And then end up taking him off the roster. So and same with Osborn. He's technically waived, not cut. Like, there's semantics. Some of these guys are no longer on the roster. So you had Chuks Okorafor, Antonio Gibson, Jacoby Brissett, Sione Takitaki, Austin Hooper, Armon Watts, Nick Lorette, KJ Osborn, Jalen Hawkins was the meat of this 2024 free agent class. And I bring this up, and I'll kind of hand it over to you, Taylor, because I know you've had not a strong opinion on it, but sort of a, well, what were they supposed to do type vibe on this? Because calling it what it is, you lose out on 4 of these guys. They're no longer with the team. But you have, again, Austin Hooper has been a solid player on this team. I would say their best free agent signing this season, followed by Antonio Gibson and Jacoby Brissett. But the rest, obviously a couple guys cut. Hawkins has been hit or miss. Sione Takitaki, same thing. Not an excellent by any means, not, even really a solid free agent class in Elliott Wolf's first season at the helm of the front office. So your thoughts on just this whole thing? I want to kind of give you the floor, because I know that you've, again, said that, well, what were they supposed to do in this offseason? So what are your thoughts on now Osborn becoming the 4th free agent signing to be cut or, off the team this season?
Yeah, and then actually somebody mentioned in the comment Joey Sly too. I guess we could throw him in there.
Oh, good call.
Yeah. I mean, if we're just being really honest about this, obviously we're the ones who, like, if there's a reason to get excited about a player, we like to hype that up, because if they have a role on the team, you're hoping they can fill that with whatever their skill set is. But at the same time, we weren't sitting here like hyping this free agent class or anything, because we knew going into free agency, there weren't a whole lot of true difference makers on the market that made sense for the Patriots. Like, I went back and looked at my article where I talked about all the top players on offense and defense. And looking back, I'm like, there were maybe 2 people they had any chance of getting. You're talking about Danielle Hunter, Christian Wilkins. Jonah Williams was one I know I did definitely want. That was one of the more disappointing ones for me, especially with the Chuks situation, which you couldn't have expected or predicted. But this wasn't a very good class. We're hoping this year is much better and you can actually burn the cash. I think Jerod Mayo set a really bad precedent by saying he wanted to burn cash.
Sure did.
Now it's the only thing people refer to, even though he did backtrack on it. But like, let's go through the list, right? Because I've seen comments under your thing saying like, fire Elliott Wolf. I'm going to start with my criticism of Elliott Wolf, all right? So I can be fair. The draft, I think much more in hindsight. Now, to be fair, we, during our draft show with John and talked about how the Patriots didn't go wide receiver and tackle with their first 2 picks, or their picks after Drake, you know, it would be very, very hard to justify, and the fan base would have burst into flames spontaneously.
We were waiting for like a box safety to come off the board for them next, and we were just going to like lose our mind. Yeah, right.
Exactly. So we were all of the mindset that it had to be tackle receiver. You can argue that they should have been more aggressive in trading up for a tackle once that run started, right? You could argue that. You could also argue that, you know, the Ladd McConkey thing is what it is. I still don't think, especially like with hindsight, obviously, he's done way better downfield outside than I expected him to. And I will 100% own up to that. But I don't think anybody was pounding the table for Ladd McConkey over Jalen Polk when he was picked. There may have been some, and if you did, congratulations, that's awesome. But one, we don't know what Polk can be at the pro level. Like, let's at least give him till next offseason once he understands the playbook and doesn't have to think he can actually play. But also with the size, the downfield ability where he shined in college, he seemed like a better fit with Drake May, right? But this year, I would say hopefully you can fill your holes in free agency and go with more of a best player available approach. Because you have holes, but you have so many holes at this point. It's just like, get difference-making players. I don't care if it's a tight end versus a receiver. I don't care if it's a defensive tackle versus an edge rusher. Get guys who are going to make an impact week in and week out, right? So that's why I think their draft strategy needs to change. In terms of free agency, this is where I'm just like, I don't really know what people wanted because the class was very shallow. They weren't a good enough team to just pay guys whatever they wanted to make them come over here. And also, I didn't think there were that many players that really fit considering age. And it seemed like they wanted to trend a little bit younger at most positions, right? So those are my criticisms. Need a different draft strategy in this offseason. As long as you finish strong, capitalize on all the money that you have, right? This is the year to burn some cash because you have way too much of it. You got to spend it somewhere, even if it means overpaying for players at the top of the market. But looking at the 2024 free agent class, Chooks, I feel like that's a scratch. That is such a weird situation. Also, a guy who was a multi-year starter, right? Wasn't a great starter, but he was at least a starting caliber player. I thought the signing made sense. I like Jonah Williams better. They wanted to go with Chooks, who was 26, young player, did show some promise, and he left because you tried to shoe him in at left tackle. Probably would have wound up at right tackle eventually, but we will never know. Antonio Gibson was the one guy we were saying, okay, this is one that really does move the needle, right? Because we haven't seen the receiving. That's been super bizarre. Maybe it was a health thing. I don't know. But he has looked better recently. Like, he's starting to pick up steam. Been one of the best outside zone runners in the NFL in recent weeks and one of the most efficient on, albeit a very limited sample size. Jacoby Brissett, disappointed on the field, but has been everything you wanted off the field as far as we've heard. Like, he's been
the Brissett signing was exactly what they needed. I think they nailed Brissett.
100%. And given the situation he was in, you can understand why he wasn't the player he was last year or 2 years ago, right? Sione Takitaki had off-season surgery. That was a significant injury. I didn't really know what to expect from him. That's another one I kind of feel like is a scratch. He's on a 2-year deal. I don't know how much they really thought he'd be able to contribute this season. He's been whatever, honestly, when he's on the field so far. You're hoping maybe next year with more familiarity in the system, he can maybe take a step forward with the Patriots. Austin Hooper has exceeded expectations. Armon Watts didn't do much in camp, didn't do much in preseason. Now he's on the Giants, and he has like 4 pressures on like 32 pass rushes. Very efficient, but, you signed him to be a depth piece to maybe replace Lawrence Guy. It didn't work out. That stuff happens. Happens with the Patriots under Belichick. It happens now. That one I don't really care about. Nick Leverett was disappointing, I will say. I was excited about him. I loved the tape when he was in Tampa Bay, when he was able to play. I thought he would be like their muscle tight end and be really good in that role. He just got he got his shit rocked those 2 weeks before he got cut. I thought maybe he was injured because it was so bad. That was maybe the most disappointing free agent signing to me, considering like he did not play nearly up to the expectation we would have hoped. So, like Leverett, huge disappointment. KJ Osborn is exactly what we thought he would be, pretty much. Less productive. I thought he would have some kind of niche role as a rotational guy, maybe, like earlier on in the season. But he wasn't very good, and that was the reality. But like Jacoby Brissett, he at least brought you something behind the scenes outside of the blip. Jalen Hawkins has been fine. It is what it is. He was signed to be a third safety, fourth safety. He's been okay. Not a huge liability, not a difference maker either. And that's pretty much, I think, what we kind of thought was going to happen. I'd also like to throw in 3 signings that Elliott Wolf made during the season. Ben Brown, pick him up mid-season. DeMontre Jacobs, you pick him up after the trade, after the cuts are made, after the initial wave of cuts. And Jaquelin Roy, who hasn't played in a while, but was one of the most productive defensive tackles in the league during the time he was playing. So if you want to talk about the ways that they missed, and they did on some of these guys, but we're talking about guys who were cut, who were on 1-year deals, and other than Shooks, they were all backups who didn't really figure like they were going to be difference makers for you anyway. I don't really care about those cuts, to be honest. They were going to be gone next year anyway. That really doesn't move me. But you managed to get 2 offensive line pieces who should never be starting in the NFL. Like they are not starting caliber players, unfortunately. Developmental prospects, if anything, or developmental young players, if anything. But they've given you good enough play that you are a top 5 offense in success rate over their past 4 games. And then, like I said, Jaquelin Roy played really well for you too. I think he could really factor in, maybe not necessarily replace Devon Gottschall long-term, but I think he could be a Daniel Ekuale type where he's a rotational guy who can make an impact as a rusher and a run defender. And I'm sorry I went on long about this. It's just something that and also the Judon contract. He got, obviously it was kind of mishandled early on where things got ugly, but they had a 3rd-round pick out of it, and he hasn't done a whole lot for Atlanta. So I understand the frustration with this last offseason because there wasn't a whole lot they could do, and the draft picks haven't worked out the way you were hoping. I completely understand the disappointment. Let's pump the brakes, right? This is Elliott Wolf's first year as a general manager. The draft wasn't really great, you got to admit, but he nailed the quarterback, got a good special teams player towards the end of the draft. And now we're hoping in this offseason he really can show what he has by filling holes with what we expect to be some premium players on the market, and then maybe learning from last draft and doing better this time around. So I just don't see the sense in just getting so worked up about Elliott Wolf after one offseason where you literally just wipe the organization clean in terms of like coaches and personnel people. Like it was a very different structure that people didn't really know whether they should buy into or not. A lot of the guys they brought in knew they were coming into a rebuilding organization and they wanted to help reset the culture, right? This offseason, if he blows it, he doesn't sign anybody, he doesn't compete for Trey Smith, he doesn't compete for T. Higgins, all those things, yeah, I'll be right with you. I'll be pissed.
Right.
Because you have too much money. I don't care if you have to overpay. If they're players with a positive track record, do what you got to do. Because you got a lot of holes to fill on this roster. You can't go into the draft with every premium position just a gaping hole. So yeah, that's basically my point. Next offseason, yeah, it's going to be a lot more intense because I think they're going to have more of an ability to acquire players.
Totally.
But like this list, I'm sorry, most of these players are depth pieces. The only ones you thought were going to start for you were Jacoby Brissett at the beginning of the year and Chuks Okorafor. Everybody else was supposed to be rotational players. So I saw Bill Simmons saying that Elliott Wolf deserved an F- and just, I don't know what's going on in that guy's football head, to be honest. Very obviously a great entrepreneur, but like, oh my God, he's got to stop tweeting about the Patriots. I shouldn't say that. I don't know. But yes, I don't think this is the year to condemn Elliott Wolf. Let's wait till this offseason and see what the guy does.
So I think that what really kind of put the blame here on Wolf, if you will, is the burn some cash comment from Jerod Mayo. Because look, they really didn't burn a ton of cash on this list. And would you have
on the roster? That's really where all the money went. Yeah.
Would you have rather first and foremost, would you as fans have rather him throw a bunch of cash at a bunch of free agents and have half of them to 3/4 of them not work out, and then you have a bunch of guys tanking your salary cap, and then Wolf's going to get in trouble for that too? So that's one aspect of this. The second one is this list obviously doesn't show the Christian Barmore extension, the Kyle Duggar extension, Hunter Henry re-signing, Kendrick Bourne re-signing, even not Taki, what's his name? Jelani Tavai, those guys, where they did use this offseason to sort of build out the core and build the inside of this roster. And finally, like I said, they didn't spend all this money on top premium free agents. I just looked through the list as you were talking, right? There's Josh Allen Hines, returned to Jacksonville. Bryce Huff goes to Philly. Daniil Hunter goes to Houston. First and foremost, edge rusher is a position of need right now. It wasn't really a position of need at the time. You had Judon, you had Uche here, you had Jennings, who you re-signed and wanted to see turn into more of a pass rusher. So first and foremost, you weren't going to take on any of those guys. Chris Jones returns to the Chiefs. Christian Wilkins, maybe.
He was older, and I think he's on injured reserve right now. Like, that was the one where I was like, if they get him, awesome. If they don't, he's old, I get. It's like Calvin Ridley a little bit. Where like they're good players. They had great seasons, really good seasons last year. But it's like, all right, if they miss out on them and they really make an effort, like it's not the worst thing in the world. And they made a very strong effort with Ridley.
Right. A couple other big ones here just before we move on is Kirk Cousins obviously not going to happen. T. Higgins gets franchise tagged. Jalen Johnson, cornerback, goes back to Chicago. Maybe would have taken a chance and get on the bidding on him, but you didn't really know where you were at the cornerback position at the time. L'Jarius Sneed gets signed and traded. Brian Burns gets traded. So like a lot of these top tier free agents, not necessarily positions of need for the Patriots last season. Of course, you want to bring in good players, but hindsight's 2020 on that front. And I do think that, where things were money-wise, you still have a ton of cap space this season because you didn't blow it on guys of non-positions of need last season. Let's see how it plays out. Obviously, it doesn't look great, and that's kind of what the goal of this tweet was. It wasn't I don't think it's bad. It's more so this is what happened. You make your opinion, make your decision on that front. But long story short, KJ Osborn released, one of the many released free agent signings from the Patriots in 2024. All right, quickly before we move on to the next thing, Patriots also signed John Parker Romo to the practice squad, a sort of backup kicker situation behind Joey Sly, who has been up and down this season for the Patriots. I think he's been relatively consistent, but then also at times he misses the 25-yarder a couple weeks ago to help the Patriots lose a couple Sundays ago. But your thoughts quickly on John Parker Roma coming in. He's somebody who was kicking for Minnesota when Will Reichard was on IR. Kicks pretty well. I think he only missed one attempt over his time in Minnesota. So thoughts on them bringing in some kicker depth before we move on?
First of all, I was looking at kicker numbers. Guess what Nick Folk is from 50 plus?
Oh God, like
he's attempted 6 kicks.
6 of 6.
Literally, you cut him because he couldn't make a single kick from distance. And he's 6 for 6. Maybe it's because it's in Tennessee. I don't know. Weather's a little better, but that's nuts to me. Folk is also 8 for 9 from 40 plus. He's only missed 1 field goal. I just had to put that out there because, wow, that's frustrating. Actually, what's Chad Ryland? Chad's 2 for 2 from 50 plus. Pretty bad from 40 to 49, which is obviously relevant this week. He's 3 for 7. But we're on Joey Sly, right? So let me look up his numbers. He has a couple losses from pretty much every distance, which is very disappointing. Mm-hmm. He has been so he's 5 for 6 from less than 30 yards. I think that was the chip shot field goal he missed last week. Yeah. 10 for 11 from 30 to 39. 3 of 5 from 40 to 49, and 4 of 6 from 50 plus. Now, Simpson Romo, friend of the show, Andre Weidengarten, pointed out that he's more like a guy who's inside the 40s. He'll be very consistent for you on some of those kinds of kicks. Gets a little dicier when you're deeper like that. So I don't think he's necessarily going to replace Joey Sly or anything like that. But I think that chip shot miss was pretty damning for Joey. Yeah. To be honest. And he's on the practice squad. So I think, if he has a good week, maybe things change. But Joey Sly's got to be better, period. And I think it was smart to at least bring in some competition so that I don't think he's complacent. Like, he's a pro, he's a veteran, he gets what it is. But I think it was smart for the Patriots to give themselves a little bit of insurance because he's just unfortunately really underperformed. Joey Sly had some really strong stretches. He's had some consecutive kicks made and looked good at times, but it feels like in some of the biggest moments, he has had some misses you just couldn't afford that ultimately cost you the game.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Again, you mentioned practice squad. I don't think this is going to be necessarily an urgent move from Sly to Parker Romo right away. I think this is just a death piece. We'll see. And if he continues to struggle on the stretch, what it does maybe is fire under his ass to kick better. When they need it most. So we will see what happens there. All right, we have a ton of coaching news. Belichick, Jerod Mayo, report from friend of the CLNS Media Network, Greg Bedard, as well. So we're going to touch on both of those before we get out of here. But first, quick word from our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get in real money sports action. They have 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all, and all you have to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to now win up to 200 times your cash. That's right, 200 times your cash on the PrizePicks app. I play it. I play the lineups every week, every weekend. Primetime games, Celtics games, they're always on my Twitter, so make sure you follow along and check it out. And now you can make the holidays bigger and brighter with PrizePicks because, like I said, it's the best place to get in your real money sports action. They also, on top of the Venmo cash outs that I always tout up here, they now also offer MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. And if you join now, PrizePicks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're also giving away $30+ million in rewards during Pickmas. That's right, it's now Pickmas on PrizePicks. So happy holidays from our friends over at PrizePicks, putting their members first. Withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. And when your picks hit, you get your money as little as 15 minutes. I was on the app earlier, Taylor. There is a new Patrick Mahomes square for the month of December. I believe it's over half a passing yard. I don't know how long it lasts, but that's a quick free add to all of your Prize Picks lineup. So sign up today. Use code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS. Get $50 instantly after playing that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Taylor, dealer's choice. Belichick or Mayo first? What do you want to hit?
Let's do Bill.
Let's do Bill. Okay. Belichick continues to be linked to the UNC head coaching job. Nothing official yet. Sounds like, at least according to Fox Sports' Jordan Schultz, that they are still kind of taking things step by step here, walking through the logistics. But it does sound like Bill, at least according to a report that came in from Ollie Conley, who frankly, not 100% sure where he works. I know it's in his Twitter bio somewhere, but I will say
he used to work in the league. I know he used to be a scout.
Okay, and so he had some news a few days ago. He was the first to sort of break in the idea that Bill is going to try and bring along Steve and make him the successor. And so he reports that Bill has agreed to become the UNC coach. Now, does that mean that UNC has agreed on their end? No, it doesn't, and I think that's why we're still moving on these types of things. But he added some interesting context here, saying that he basically handed them a manifesto, a Bible, of how he is going to run this program with payment plans, staffing choices, and things of that nature. Also added that this would require historic levels of investment from the school, with salary minimums position by position and willingness to hire 2 staffs, one on the coaching side, one on the GM side. So really diving into this NIL side of the new college football landscape. So I think this is fascinating stuff, and I think because when we recorded our video the other day on why Belichick won't go to college, we both, and I sort of made this point, but I think the NIL side of college football, where you have to pay these players, and there's a lot of negotiations with 18-year-old kids who haven't proven, for lack of a better word, shit on the football field. That's going to be, I thought that would be tough for Bill Belichick to do, but it seems like he's kind of laying the groundwork to do exactly that. So before we move on to Mayo, just thoughts on this, Taylor. What do you make of the Belichick stuff? And do you think, at least reading these tea leaves and sort of where the reports are going, do you actually think that he's going to end up on the college at the college level?
Can you actually scroll down a little bit more? Because I feel like there's one more part of this that's pretty
pushback.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe touch on that. So first of all, it's not. This is why I think Jordan Schultz made sure to clarify there was not an agreement in place yet, because Ollie said that Belichick is basically on board and he's waiting for UNC to figure their stuff out.
Yeah.
But Belichick is going to be so expensive. And this is what we talked about in our video about, okay, UNC is a basketball school. Are they really going to give like dozens of millions of dollars to make sure they can support Belichick and the athletes that he's going to recruit? I just don't know if that's a realistic possibility. I know, and I thought maybe Bill would take a pay cut because Steve Belichick is tied to this and he would take over for Bill sometime, which never happened before, where a father was like, yeah, I'll work for you if you hire my son after 2 years. In the NFL, I'm sure it happens several other places, but that was, I don't know I've ever heard of that before, but I mean, he would have to take one hell of a pay cut, basically less than half of what he was making when he was with the Patriots, or at least what we know or think that he was making at that time. So, I still don't think this is very likely. It sounds like the school and like the people kind of at the top aren't super on board with it. And if they're not going to put up the money for Bill, I don't think he's going. So, it's interesting. I think this whole thing is definitely fascinating. Now that we have more details, at first, to be honest, I was kind of indifferent. I'm like, all right, doesn't affect my life. So
I know.
Weird thing. I don't really care. But this whole thing with the Bible, I'm sure he was showing this to teams when he was kind of, especially the Falcons, when he was trying to get a job this offseason. So it's interesting, but I still think it's pretty unlikely.
Yeah, like you said, he has this, and Ollie writes this in the thread as well. He has a college and pro version of this coaching manual that he is relaying to teams, which again, I joked on Twitter with the picture of him with like his sweatshirt ripped, like sitting in an interview, like, yeah, what do you want to know about me? I'm Bill Belichick. But like clearly he goes into these things very well prepared. And I think that's exactly what you need. What's that?
Oh, I was saying, like this is Bill Belichick. I would assume that he was like had his shit together.
Right. And I would love to be a fly on the wall in these meetings where, I mean, he apparently met with the chancellor yesterday for 5 hours in Boston. He was meeting with a group of guys in NYC on Sunday. as well. And then he also had this initial Zoom interview. So like it's very real. I think that's the main thing we have to look at here, where there's these rumors, there's reports of all these interviews happening, this coaching guide that he has and brings. Like, I don't think he would waste his time with UNC if he wasn't at least interested. We'll see if the school is on the other end. You mentioned that this other part here where there was pushback from a group of trustees. The investment, again, would overhaul the school's approach to football. And it feels like, again, this huge financial like, I wonder just from UNC's side where, yes, it's going to help your program, you would think, for, the short term, 2-3 years. Belichick's there, great coach, notoriety. Like, that's going to almost pay for itself, when you unleash this. But then you talk about, now you sort of set an NIL standard for a basketball school, right? Like you said, and can they keep that up post Belichick? I think that's probably what they're questioning here, because it's such a short-term, high-energy investment that may kind of trickle down from there. So we'll certainly see how this goes. But fascinating stuff on the Bill Belichick front, potentially headed.
Real quick, Ollie works for the Guardian, so he is a reliable source. Like,
okay.
Legit. Just wanted to kind of clarify that, so it didn't seem like just because he has the read optional. I think that's his website. I'm not 100% sure, but it's not just that. He does work for the Guardian.
No, for sure. And I didn't mean to dump water on his reporting by any means, but it's just like, I know you know that, but it's
Gordon Schultz that clapped back, but he tweeted like minutes after. So I mean, I mean, there's some level of disconnect somewhere. Maybe somebody said something they shouldn't have, and then Ollie said it, and it was like, wait, hold up. We didn't want that to be out there. I don't know. But because it is kind of different stories for those two guys.
And with this story, the first real report came from a UNC blog inside Carolina. It's like, so those guys kind of and I mentioned it the other day. It's like Kevin Stone. He was all over the Thomas Castellanos news at BC, but then it gets broken by Pete Thamel at ESPN, but he knew it. People don't take it as seriously because it's smaller, but I'll take Ollie for what, for his word, because it's frankly, because it gives us something to talk about. All right, let's move on to the Patriots head coach, Jerod Mayo. New reporting from Greg Bedard. Like I said, CLNS podcaster from Boston Sports Journal. He reported today that Robert Kraft would not hesitate to fire Jerod Mayo if he feels he made the wrong choice. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the storyline, if you will, that we've sort of talked about on here, that Mayo is safe because they put in such a heavy investment into him, and he made it clear that he picked him 5 years ago on the trip, to Europe, and, all of this, all of that kind of stuff, and that he should get more than 1 year to try and turn this thing around. But, in Greg's piece on Boston Sports Journal today, basically said that no, if things go south here, his job is not safe. And I'm paraphrasing. Go read the whole thing at BSJ if you'd like to check it out. But some interesting stuff from Greg. And I feel like it feels like new news. But at the end of the day, and we were talking about it earlier, Taylor, on the phone, where this whole thing with Mayo, if they lose the locker room, that's a fireable offense. And so 4 straight games of, getting your asses whooped, you can lose the locker room over these next 4 games. So I think it would make sense. There is a way for him to lose his job this season. I just think it's very unlikely. But your thoughts on the report and where the Patriots are going after this?
Yeah, it's pretty much what we've been saying is the only way that you fire a coach after 1 year is if they lose the locker room. And yeah, I think that the team understands they have a very tough slate of opponents coming up. You got Buffalo twice, but I think you're good enough that you can compete in those games, especially with Drake May. Now, if it's like one blowout and they're competitive in the others, is what it is. But like you said, if they, cannot be competitive down the stretch, I think it's going to be very hard for players to still have that same level of buy-in. And I know John Jones mentioned he's so proud of how tight they've remained through all this adversity and everything, how being such a young team kind of gives you a little more push in a losing season where these guys want to prove themselves versus veterans who may be like, you know what, I'm kind of checked out. Like, I might even be here next year. I really am not trying to put my body on the line like that. We know Austin Hooper is not in that category because he was like,
love those comments for him yesterday.
Yeah, he's like, you can be a professional or you can start thinking about where you want to vacation. And from every indication we have from Austin Hooper, he ain't thinking about vacation. Like, that man he took his time away and now he's going to ball out. But I think that would make sense. I've said as long as Jerod finishes, like he said, finish on a high note, show areas of progress, For me, I think that would be more consistency overall. I think it means executing in the red zone, fewer penalties. Biggest thing I think is penalties and miscommunications. Those have been the biggest bugaboos on both sides of the ball that have really been holding these Patriots back. So if you see growth in those departments, and to be fair, while I don't know exactly what edge Mayo brings, other than like, obviously he's a former player, I think he's very good with the players in the way that he communicates with them. And he has maintained buy-in and I think reset the culture in a way where at least people feel I would say more secure with themselves because they are like, they have stake in the team and all this versus Belichick, where you are more of a piece on a board than you are someone who's, seen as like, hey, this is your team as well. Maybe I didn't phrase that exactly right. I know that, Bill wasn't treating these guys necessarily like robots, but we do know that Jerod very much wanted to change how that went. But yeah, man, like it's put up or shut up time at this point. Like we know the roster's not great, but it's not really an excuse for a lot of things that have gone on. The talent deficit is a part of that, but bottom line, you have to show that you are at least like competing with these teams. And then when you get those other players, you can get better. Because also if you bomb, I think it hurts your perception in free agency where people may not want to come because yeah, you have Drake May, but like you sucked down the stretch. You were really, really bad versus if you're 2-2 or you're 3-1 or something where, you can at least show like, look how close we were to beating Buffalo and the Chargers and the Cardinals, all teams that might be in the playoffs. We just need a few extra guys to get us over that hump. Then you're good. But yeah, if he botches it down the stretch, it's not something new for us. We've been saying, yeah, that's going to be how he loses his job. So we'll see. But again, the consistency has to improve.
Yeah, even like you mentioned 3-1, 2-2. I think even if you go 0-4, but play games close and fight till the end, you're safe. Like
0-4 is a tough look.
But who are they going to beat?
I think the Chargers. I honestly think they could beat the Chargers. If they play their best game, they minimize
the Chargers just almost beat the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are the best team in football.
I mean, yeah, but then the Patriots almost beat the Bengals. Like we could do that.
I know, yeah.
Any given Sunday, teams don't perform the same way week in and week out. And the Cardinals, frankly, I think this is a beatable team as well. I think these are games where they're not the Colts. It's not the same kind of thing. Right. But the Cardinals are inconsistent. The Chargers only have one real receiver. Like, I really do think if they play disciplined football, they'll be in those games till the very end. Buffalo, we'll see. I think how they play the Cardinals is going to tell us a little bit more about how competitive they can be with Buffalo coming out of the bye and whatnot. Sure. But yeah, I do think that 0-4 is going to be a really tough thing to explain. I don't care how competitive you are. You got to win at least one of these last few games.
Should be interesting. We'll see how that happens. But yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to be tough for him to lose his job. But if you go out there and stink up the joint and, again, losing the locker room, losing the buy-in, that's hard to sell going into next season for free agents. And frankly, it's hard to sell to ownership, right? When you go and have that meeting after the season, like what happened down the stretch and not just losing, but losing by a lot. We're talking things into existence. Still a lot of hypotheticals right now, but Mayo mentioned over the bye week.
We're not speaking anything into existence.
Right, yeah. With Tom Curran, he talked to him over the bye week and basically said that he has meetings with ownership all the time. And so, he's going to probably have his feet held to the fire after the season to kind of explain, A, what happened, what's the plan moving forward, and essentially why should we keep you on board. So we'll see what happens there, but I do think that go. Sorry.
I'm sorry. There was one more thing because we talked about this. Another is, so by every metric, the Patriots are a very conservative team, which kind of made sense when they were still in the thick of things. And, you're thinking, okay, maybe they're still on the hunt or whatever. Now that they're not, you've had your bye week, you've had your time to reset. I want to see the Patriots be the team that wants to ruin everyone's season that lines up against them. I know the Bills are already in the playoffs, but like, make things harder for them. Like, mess with their seeding. Like, you're playing them twice. I need them to go in saying, like, we are playing with house money. Go for it on fourth downs in the red zone. Be aggressive. Don't take the conservative approach, because if you do, it's like, why are you doing this? The wins don't count. Like, obviously, we said the wins matter 100%. And I'm not saying to just completely throw your brain out and just like go complete balls to the wall, but I do want to see more aggressiveness. I want to see a little more competitive fire from the coaches, specifically Mayo in his decision-making, and obviously Evan Rothstein, because he's a big part of that. But yeah, I think that's one thing you want to see is like, hey, Drake May especially, give him opportunities to convert in very difficult situations, because If he can't, it's a learning experience. And if he can, you know even more that you can rely on that down the stretch and in the future. So that's another thing I want to see from this coaching staff. Be aggressive. You are playing with house money against a lot of good teams where those kinds of plays can make the difference. Don't be punting on 4th and 2 when you're at midfield. Like, bump that shit. I'm so sick of seeing that. And that's the thing that really frustrates me with Mayo. It's like you're leaning on this freaking Evan Rothstein guy. What has he done? I can't remember. They've had some well executed like end of halves and things like that, but every single week in these close games that they don't win, we talk about, I don't know why they did that in that situation or this situation. And it's like a list of questionable calls that we have to go back and review. Like, I'm sick of that, man. Be aggressive, try to win these games, and try to put the fear of God in these teams and be the kind of unit that I know you're not the most talented, but be a tough, disciplined unit that these teams don't want to play. That's what Jerod Mayo sold you when he took over. Let's start seeing some semblance of that down the stretch.
I love it. We got some fire out of Tayler Kyles before the end of this episode. All right, quick word from our friends at Game Time before we close this thing out and head into the Week 15 game against the Cardinals, because we're powered by Game Time. As you all know, it's the exclusive ticketing partner of the CLNS Media Network, and they have this new feature. We talk about it every week. It's called Game Time Picks, and it makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. It filters out all of the fluff and shows you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Right now, if you are headed west to Arizona's State Farm Stadium to watch the Patriots play, but you haven't bought your tickets yet, you can get in for as little as $35 right now on the Game Time app, and that is with the all-in pricing toggle turned on. What is the all-in pricing toggle? It means that it tells you exactly what you're going to pay, no hidden fees, no taxes, nothing at checkout. It is just what you pay, so you don't get hit with them on the other end. If you want to stay home, check out the Patriots taking on the Chargers coming up in a couple weeks. Little as $29 right now on the Game Time app. Not too shabby to watch your favorite team play. So head over to Game Time right now. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code CLNS. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is code CLNS. You get $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Taylor?
Game time.
Sure is. It's game time. It's also time to wrap up this podcast quickly. Final thoughts on post-bye week. I know you kind of gave them just there about being the spoiler and coming in and being aggressive, but we know what the optimism is, and it's Drake May, and it's this offense kind of clicking, and it's the secondary with Christian Gonzalez and Christian Barmore kind of hitting a run here. What are you looking for this team to improve on down the stretch? What do they have to do over these next 4 games to make you confident heading into 2025?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to some of it, but I'll go a little bit more in depth. So I actually wrote a piece, the 3 areas I thought the Patriots really needed to improve. The first,
go check it out, clnsmedia.com. Just wanted to
check
point
it out. The first one is the red zone execution on both sides of the ball. For the Patriots offense, a lot of it's had to do with penalties, where they're in good position and they keep pushing themselves deeper and deeper, and not only taking touchdowns off the board. They've had 3 touchdowns taken off the board since week 3 because of penalties. There was the KJ Osborn one, there was a Mike and Winnie hold with Ramondre Stevenson, and then there was Demario Douglas not getting set on the scramble touchdown from Drake to Kendrick Bourne last week. That stuff can't happen, man. Like, you're moving the ball extremely well. If you execute in the red zone, these games could have maybe not been blowouts, because obviously, like, you score points, it forces the other team to be more aggressive. I don't like getting into the hypothetical of what would happen necessarily, but you're putting up more points. And now this offense, when you look at points per game, is one of the worst in the NFL. But by every other metric, they're doing very well. So for the offense, I think you need to stop with the penalties. Stop hurting yourself in scoring territory and start turning these field goals or missed field goals into touchdowns. On defense, it's the communication in the red zone. It's been the biggest thing. They have been the worst red zone defense in the NFL over the past month. No one has given up more touchdowns. I believe it's 9. No one's given up more than that. Almost all of those have come on some type of miscommunication where coverage wasn't passed off, somebody's eyes were in the wrong place, and they had somebody going the opposite way. Anthony Richardson, both times he punched it in the end zone. Every time he punched it in the end zone, you have the miscommunication where Jonathan Taylor is going, free in the flat. There were 3 different people who could have scored touchdowns on that play. You had the Richardson touchdown where Christian Gonzalez was unblocked and didn't realize what the play was until it was too late. You had the 2-point conversion where Christian Ellis shows poor eye discipline, flies out for the running back, doesn't even account for a QB keeper, even though we were literally sitting in the press box saying, if I'm Indianapolis, I'm daring the Patriots to stop a quarterback run They couldn't do it all game. So we're going to touch on all these kind of factors down the road. But one, red zone execution on both sides has to be better. Offensively, you're moving the ball well, finish drives. Defensively, you can be a bend but don't break defense. I think with the talent deficits, like you're playing a lot of good running backs, athletic quarterbacks. They've got weapons. Like it's not going to be easy to just shut these guys down, other than maybe the Chargers again. But at the bottom line, you can bend, they get into scoring territory, make them kick field goals, make sure you're on the same page. I'm so sick and tired of seeing these touchdowns. Like that is the biggest thing with DeMarcus Covington, where I'm like, I don't think it's you. Especially when it's a lot of veterans and inexperienced. When it's the inexperienced players, you're like, yeah, Christian Ellis doesn't play a whole lot or doesn't have a lot of defensive experience. Christian Gonzalez, I think that was maybe just an unfamiliar spot for him. And Kyle Duggar's just been the one where I don't really understand what's going on with him. But they got to get that under control. Second thing, offensive sync. With Demario Douglas, we've seen it. He's really been the headliner. But Kendrick Bourne has admitted to running at least one wrong route. And I think every game, if not almost every single game he's played since he returned. Can't have that from your veterans. You also have Demario Douglas, like I mentioned, where sometimes against the blitz, he's not running the proper number of steps. He's kind of running into defenders. Got a little bit better last week, but still far from perfect. And then I know there was the Hunter Henry. I wouldn't really call that lack of sync. That was really just an inaccurate pass that Hunter Henry couldn't bring in. But the sync period is the only thing where when they're in the open field, you really see as the most glaring weakness that I think is correctable. How quickly can you correct it? Can you, be a well-oiled machine? I don't know. I don't really think so, to be honest. You're at the tail end of the season. It's going to be really hard.
Feels like an off-season problem.
Exactly. But it needs to be a priority and something they focus and hone in on as an area of improvement. It may not be perfect, but it needs to be better. Last thing, containing mobile quarterbacks. You are facing three of the most athletic passers in the NFL, three of the best designed runners in the NFL, and all three guys who are very effective as scramblers. Now, the Patriots, to their credit, for the most part, have been much better against mobile quarterbacks. Much, much better. It's really the last week you had the blitz from Jabril Peppers on 4th and 2. Where he takes a bad angle to Anthony Richardson. He gets out of the pocket, scrambles, throws it for a conversion. The game could have pretty much been over if Jabril Peppers had taken a better angle and been able to at least get in Anthony Richardson's face to maybe affect the play. You also had, I know there was a scramble that he had. The scramble where Eric Johnson, it looked like may have had a lapse and he kind of ran up the middle. It wasn't terrible. Like when you look at the raw stats, it was better than what I expected them to do against Anthony Richardson, but it was all the production was in the most important moments. That cannot happen because they hadn't seen anybody like Anthony Richardson before. You're going to see a few guys that are kind of like him in terms of being Kyler Murray small, but he's very fast and very elusive. Right. And then Josh Allen and Herbert are massive aliens with big arms, big frames who can run over you or they can run around you. Those guys, you cannot let their athleticism be the reason you lose. They're going to have a couple plays. Is Josh Allen in one of these next two games they play going to throw a pass when he's 2 inches from the sideline and throw a touchdown? Hell, maybe.
Probably, yeah.
Like he's Josh Allen. I'm not expecting you to shut these guys down, but in those critical moments, like I need better awareness and I need just better execution overall because there were avoidable mistakes they made that led to those conversions. So once again, improved execution in the red zone on both sides of the ball. Offensively, get in sync, whether it's against zone, whether it's running your right routes. Like I know it might not be perfect, but it needs to be better than what it's been in recent weeks, as good as it's been overall. And then defensively, specifically, you got to have some kind of answer to mobile quarterbacks. Patriots have always been bad against mobile quarterbacks. So again, that's why my expectations aren't super high, but you cannot have them they can't just have you over their knee spanking you all game because you have no idea how to defend them. Continue to be good in terms of your pass rush and be disciplined there, but be better against the quarterback runs. And those are really my three big ones.
Love it. Good stuff there, Taylor. We appreciate the hard work you do. My big one, it's simple. Let's see what the rookies have in store. The two linemen, the two wide receivers. That's the big stuff for the Patriots. It's the obvious. It's the obvious storyline, but I think over these next 4 games, you're going to see what you have in those guys. Jerod Mayo said it best. We want to see what we have heading in to 2025 from a roster standpoint. So we will be back tomorrow with a mailbag. We'll be back on Thursday with some previews as the Patriots get ready to take on the Cardinals this weekend coming up in Arizona. So make sure you keep it here on Patriots Press Pass. Subscribe to Patriots Daily wherever you get your podcasts and tune in here for all of our Patriots coverage on the channel. Patriots Press Pass, our podcast. Pat's Beat coming up at 4 o'clock, so tune in with Alex and Brian. Taylor also has a special guest coming up on the pod. I didn't know if you wanted me to tell it, Taylor, or if you want to save it. So Tease it. What do you want?
Yeah, I'll tease it. Friend of the show, Derek Klassen's going to be stopping by, breaking down some Drake May film before the Cardinals game. Going to be going over the tape for things that he really likes, which I'm sure is going to be plentiful, and also give a couple clips of areas where he can improve because he's still a rookie. He's still a long way to go in his NFL career. Derek is always a great time. There's always great feedback when he comes on. One of my favorite humans in this industry, so that's going to be a lot of fun as always.
Love it. Keep it locked in here on Press Pass. Check it out. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you next time. Peace out, everyone.